Have you ever wondered why people often interrupt you, as if what you say is not worth listening to? Why do their eyes pass you by, stop at someone else, and then forget you are there? Have you ever been in a crowded room, laughing with them fully present, but felt like you were completely invisible? You have tried to be seen, to be understood, but all you get in return are half-hearted conversations, polite nods, and relationships that only come to you when they need something. When you are weak, they call it too sensitive. When you are hurt, they say you think too much. When you say no, they think you are making a big deal out of it. You gradually learn that if you want to be loved, you have to be silent. If you want peace, you have to endure. If you want to have a place in someone's heart, you have to be always ready, always kind, always sacrificing, even when you are exhausted. And then, every time you give and get nothing in return, you tell yourself, "I'm just not good enough." But there is a truth that you have probably never dared to face. It's not that the world is too cruel to you, it's that you have unconsciously allowed it to happen. You always try to be respected by others, but you have never truly respected yourself. And that others feel it. They don't have to say it, but they react to you exactly the way you treat yourself. Carl Jung once said, "The scariest thing is to accept yourself completely." And that is also what you always avoid. Because if you really look inside, you will have to admit that you were the first one to stay silent when you were treated badly. You were the one who didn't speak up. You were the one who forgave too easily. You have silenced your voice to maintain a so-called peace. A peace that makes you lose yourself little by little. You don't need to change the world. You just need to change how you position yourself in it. And to do that, you will need the courage to look at the one thing you have always avoided. The truth that you are trading your self-esteem for love. In this video, we will not seek to change others. We will go to the root where you learn to be silent, to endure, to be humble very early. Because only when you dare to face that, you can truly escape the cycle of being looked down upon. Not by screaming or rebelling, but by rebuilding respect from within. If you are ready to look at yourself, to understand why you always feel small, and most importantly, to change that, then this is the moment to start. Don't look away from this video, because what follows may be the words you've been waiting your whole life to hear. Not from someone else, but from yourself. You are so used to being silent that sometimes you don't even realize you're being hurt. You are so used to pleasing others that you don't know what your true desires are. You are used to saying, "It's okay, I'm fine, I can help," while deep inside you are struggling, tired, hurt. And you call that maturity. You pride yourself on being patient, thinking of others, and controlling your emotions. But do you know, it's very possible that what you think is maturity is actually just a form of survival. You are living according to an unconscious pattern that you learned very early on to be accepted. You have to be obedient, to be loved. You have to please others, to be at peace. You have to avoid conflict at all costs. And because you have lived in that pattern for so long, you no longer realize that it is the barrier that prevents you from being respected. There is a truth that few people want to face. Other people treat you not because they are bad, but because you allow them to. You don't speak up. You don't refuse. You don't retreat. You don't fight back. And the world understands, oh, you're okay with that. You keep going in a cycle, get hurt, stay silent. So a hope the other person notices, then get hurt again. And the more you stay silent, the more you reinforce a dangerous message that your feelings don't matter, that you're willing to put yourself down to keep a relationship, even if it's not worth it. You wonder why other people don't value you. But perhaps the better question is, how much do you value yourself? Every time you say yes when you want to say no, you betray yourself. Every time you stay in a relationship that makes you feel small, you erode your self-worth. None of this happens overnight. It starts small. One moment of humility, one moment of doing someone else's work, one moment of not expressing your true feelings for fear of being judged. And you do it again, until it becomes your way of being, not living but existing in the comfort zone of conformity. And the most dangerous thing, it's that you start to believe that it's your nature. You think, I'm easygoing, I don't want to bother anyone, I'm not good at setting boundaries. But no, it's not your nature. It's how you learn to survive in a world where you think you're not worthy enough to be yourself. And as Carl Jung said, until you make your unconscious conscious, it will run your life, and you will call it destiny. You were not born to suffer, but you are living a script that you did not write. You are just playing it perfectly. So if you want to be respected, you need to start by understanding that this cycle can be broken. But to do that, you must first recognize that it exists. You must look at the way you talk to yourself every day, because no one can respect someone who does not stand up for themselves. Are you living to please others, or are you living true to your true self? Are you writing your own life, or are you just rereading the same script over and over again because you are afraid of change? To break this cycle, you need to take the first step to see it. And when you see the inner mechanisms that operate you, you will begin to see why everything around you happens the way it does. And that's where we come in. When the world isn't against you, it's just a reflection of you, brutally honest. When you feel disrespected by others, the first thing that comes to your mind is usually, they are terrible. When you are ignored, taken advantage of, hurt, you blame them on the indifference, the selfishness, the coldness of the world. But if you stop for a moment, really stop, and look deeper, you will realize something much more frightening. The world is not against you. It is just reflecting you. Carl Jung called this the phenomenon of the projection of the unconscious. The outside world is not simply where you live. It is a big mirror, the clearest reflection of your relationship with yourself. The people you attract, the situations you repeat, the emotions that are triggered in you, they are all messages. And if you keep encountering disrespect, maybe it is time to ask, what message am I sending about myself? Imagine you walk into a room with your head down, your eyes averted, your voice reserved, and you are always ready to give way to avoid conflict. You may not say it, but you are sending a clear signal. I don't think I'm important. And the world, which doesn't have time to understand everyone, simply reacts to that signal. It sees you as you see yourself. The truth is, no one can look down on you more than you look down on yourself in silence. No one can put you down unless you silently agree with it. And that is the root of your repeating a life of feeling small, lost, and abandoned. It sounds unfair because you didn't do anything bad. You just wanted to love, just wanted peace, just wanted to be kind. But the thing is, kindness is not silence. Love is not tolerance. Peace is not disappearance. You can change jobs, break up with a relationship, leave a person, even move to another city. But if you still carry around a low self-image, the world will continue to project it through different circumstances, different people, but the same pain. Because you don't attract what you want, you attract what you believe you deserve. That belief, largely unconscious, is the most powerful force in every relationship you have. When you believe you have to be tough to be loved, you will always find someone who makes you tough. When you believe you're not good enough, if you don't help someone, you will always end up being taken advantage of. And this isn't to blame yourself, it's to make you realize you have a choice. The world doesn't have the power to create pain in you, unless you've left your inner door wide open, unguarded. Inside you is an image of yourself. Maybe it's an image of a weak person, a neglected child, someone who's not good enough, not interesting enough, not worthy enough, and you carry that image into the world. You say, "I'm fine," but your eyes say, "I'm just trying not to bother anyone." You smile, but your heart is full of worry, that people will leave me if I do something wrong. The world doesn't see the real you. The world only sees the image you present, and they treat that image, not the person you are. So if you want to change the way the world treats you, you don't have to scream. You don't have to prove anything. You just have to start changing the way you see yourself. You don't have to be strong. You have to believe you already have value. You don't need to ask for anyone's permission. Respect doesn't come from the outside. It's built from within. Every little action, every boundary you dare to set, every time you choose truth over convenience. And when you truly stand in your values, you don't need to ask for approval. It comes. That's when you stop looking for approval and start living as someone who accepts yourself. That's when the mirror of the world begins to reflect a new image. An image of a person who knows who they are and is worthy of respect. And to stand in that image, you'll need the courage to do what you've been avoiding all along. To look at the deepest parts of yourself, where you've learned to accept the unacceptable, just to be loved. That's when we move on to the next part, where the silent compromises begin. How many times have you felt angry, taken advantage of, felt like you should have said something, but then stayed silent? You walk out of that conversation, out of that room, wondering why you didn't respond. Why did you let it go? Why did you get used to being hurt, like it was your natural course? The answer isn't in that moment. It doesn't start with the person who hurt you. It starts long before that, where you learned to shut yourself down to survive, where you learned that if you speak up, you will be punished. If you show emotion, you will be seen as weak, as a nuisance. If you demand something from yourself, you will be rejected, and so you develop a script. If you want love, don't cause trouble. You didn't consciously choose that. You didn't sit down and decide to give yourself up, but unconsciously, every little experience in childhood, every cold look, every time you were ignored, every scolding when you simply needed a hug, all of them have engraved a message. I am only worthy when I am good, when I am useful, when I do not upset anyone. And that is when you trade yourself for the feeling of being loved. This is a silent sin, not because you did anything wrong, but because you have lived with a false belief for too long. You grew up confusing love with obedience, kindness with self-destruction. You confuse external peace with internal peace. And the more silent you are, the more guilty you feel if one day you want to speak up. When you say no, you feel like a bad person. When you set limits, you feel selfish. When you prioritize yourself, you feel like you are betraying someone. That is not true. It is the voice of your unconscious scripts, the subtle programming in your mind, created by the absence of true love. It makes you censor yourself, even when no one is asking you to. It makes you choose to be silent, not because you have nothing to say, but because you think you have no right to say it. How many times have you forgiven before someone else has even noticed the mistake? How many times have you done someone else's work and smiled as if you weren't tired? How many times have you been treated with indifference and still continued to maintain that relationship because of fear of loss, fear of losing someone, but really fear of losing the opportunity to be recognized, to be loved, even a little. But the sad thing is, when you accept love in any form, even hurt, you are teaching others, I don't need to be treated right to stay. And that is why you continue to be taken for granted, because you are still taking yourself for granted. Repeated behavior. The script repeats itself. You keep reliving the same things in new contexts. A new friend, but the same person. A new job, but still feeling like you're being used. A new relationship, but you feel like you need to keep quiet, to keep the peace. Not because the world hasn't changed, but because you haven't changed the way you treat yourself. Carl Jung said, "We don't become enlightened by imagining images of light, but by making our shadows conscious." And your shadows are the scripts you're playing out every day, without even realizing it. They're not bad, they just need to be seen. And when you dare to look at them, you're no longer controlled by them. You begin to remember, you had a voice, you had dreams, you had boundaries, you had sacred anger, the emotion that said, enough. You can start right now, stop, and ask yourself, how much of your life is a free choice? And how much is an extension of unconscious compromise? How many yes have you said, out of fear of being left behind? How many smiles have you given to hide a suppressed anger? You don't have to break everything in one day, but you do have to start seeing the truth, because no one can step out of a role they don't know they're playing. And when you start to see clearly what you've been unconsciously accepting, you'll begin to understand, to be respected, you don't have to do more. You just have to start doing what few people dare to do. Say no. And that is the first act of a person learning to return to their true worth. The act of a person who has been forgotten by themselves, and now they're coming back to find themselves. There is a point at which every journey of self-respect must pass. A seemingly small moment that has profound transformative power. The moment when you dare to say no. No to requests that make you uncomfortable. No to relationships that make you feel small. No to unreasonable expectations from others. And especially no to the part of you that always wants to compromise to be loved. Saying no is the first action that a person who has been conditioned by fear must relearn. Not the no of rebellion, but the no of awakening. The first refusal you say not against anyone, but on your own side. But it is not easy, because you have lived too long with the guilt of putting yourself first. You have become too accustomed to measuring your kindness by the extent of your sacrifice. And you think that if you say no, you will lose love, acceptance, or at least a comfortable existence in a system you have become accustomed to. The truth is, you probably will. Lose some old relationships. Lose the satisfaction of those who used to see you as compliant. Lose the image of someone who is always available, always kind, always sacrificing. But in that loss, you begin to find yourself again. Saying no is not just refusing a request, it is a symbolic act. It sends a clear message. I have boundaries. I am valuable. I no longer trade my inner peace for outer peace. But be prepared for this. Those who have benefited from your silence will not be happy when you start speaking up. Those who are used to you always saying yes will call you selfish when you start saying no. They will say you have changed. They will try to pull you back into your old role, the role of someone who is so kind that they erase themselves. And this is the test. This is where you need to distinguish between true love and dependence disguised as flattery. Someone who truly loves you will not feel hurt because you have limits. Someone who truly respects you will not see your saying no as a betrayal. The question is, are you willing to endure the initial discomfort to regain lasting freedom? Are you willing to endure the emptiness of separating from old relationships, to open up space for connections that truly support you? Carl Jung once said, "There is no awakening without pain." And the first pain of self-esteem is putting yourself first in a world that has taught you that doing so is wrong. But remember this, you don't have to force yourself to be cold, hard, or insensitive. You just have to be honest enough to never betray yourself again. Start with small things. A text you don't have to respond to right away. An invitation you don't want to accept. A request you can say no to without feeling guilty. Every time you do that, you're sending a new signal to the world. I have boundaries. And the magic happens. The world starts to respond. People start to adjust how they approach you. Those who can't respect you will leave. Those who can't respect you will come around, or new ones, and see you for what you are. Saying no is the first step, but it doesn't stand alone. It's the beginning of a series of actions of self-respect. It's a daily choice, choosing truth over comfort, choosing to be true to yourself over trying to please others. You don't have to shout to be heard. You just have to stop saying yes in silence. And the amazing thing is, the moment you dare to displease others, you also begin to do something very sacred. Make peace with the part of you that once felt invisible. But the journey to self-esteem doesn't stop with behavior. To truly be sustainable, you'll need to go deeper, into the deepest recesses of your mind, where your rejected parts are kept. Because there's something else that's silently driving every act of submission. Every time you don't dare say no, the shadow, the part of your psyche that you've buried for fear of being rejected. And that's where we're going next. Not to run away, but to look directly at what you've been denying. Because only when you make peace with the shadow can you truly stand up for your whole self. There is a part of you that you try to hide from. The part that you don't want anyone to see. The part that makes you feel ashamed, that makes you feel wrong, that isn't allowed to be there. It's the anger that you've never dared to admit. It's the toughness that you've been blamed for. It's the fierceness that you've been taught to suppress. It's the need to be loved, to be seen, to be cared for, that you learned to suppress from a very young age. Carl Jung called it the shadow. The shadow is not the bad part of you. It's the sum of everything you've been forbidden to express, by your family, by society, by your environment, by the times you've been hurt when you expressed yourself. And from there, you learn to push it into a corner. You suppress it. You deny it. You label it. I'm not allowed to be like this. You think you have it under control, but you don't. What you don't face will silently control you from behind. The shadow doesn't go away. It lives inside you, and it's the reason you can't say no when you need to. It's the voice that makes you afraid of conflict, afraid of losing someone, afraid of not being loved if you express yourself. It's the voice that whispers in your head every time you speak up. Be careful, if you say this, you'll be left behind. You think it's your intuition, but it's actually the voice of an older version of yourself, the child who was ignored, who was punished for expressing her true feelings. And you've lived by that voice all your life. It's the shadow that keeps you in toxic relationships, because you don't believe you deserve better. It's the shadow that keeps you seeking validation from others, because you've denied yourself the ability to validate yourself. It's the shadow that keeps you doing things that go against your true feelings, just to be called a good person. But you can't be authentic if you're still afraid of your shadow. You can't be strong if you still feel shameful about assertiveness. You can't be respected if you still feel guilty about setting boundaries. You can't love yourself if you haven't forgiven the parts of yourself you've denied. Liberation doesn't come from covering up your shadow. It comes from daring to look at it with understanding and compassion. Your shadow doesn't want to destroy you. It's just asking to be seen. It's the self-protective, honest part of you that you've abandoned. And if you dare to step into it, you'll find the power you thought you didn't have. You thought anger was negative, but if you listen to healthy anger, it will show you where you're being violated. You thought being assertive was selfish, but if you use it well, it will be a shield to protect you from the unworthy. You thought wanting to be loved was weakness, but in fact, it is that need, when acknowledged, that fuels real connections. The shadow is not the enemy. It is the missing part of you that makes you whole. Carl Jung once said, "No one can become enlightened without daring to enter the shadow." And it is true. If you live only by a mask, by the role of always positive, always okay, always giving, then you are only living half a life. The other half, the fierce part, the honest part, the instinctive part, is waiting to be released. That is why the more you try to be kind, the more humble, the more proper, the world still does not respect you, because you are sending an unbalanced signal. On the outside you are gentle, but on the inside you are in turmoil. On the outside you are accepting, but on the inside you are resentful. Others sense that contradiction, and they cannot see the wholeness in you. Wholeness doesn't come from being right. It comes from daring to be yourself, the light and the dark. And it's when you begin to integrate the shadow, when you dare to say, "I have the right to be angry. I have the right to say no. I have the right to prioritize. I have the right to be imperfect." That's when you begin to be authentic. And for the first time, others will sense it. Not because you're trying to impress, but because you're no longer trying to please anyone. You're just living in the most honest way possible. But even as you understand this, there's one thing that holds you back, your deepest fear. If I live authentically, will anyone stay? It's the fear of abandonment, the fear of being alone, and it's the final obstacle on the path to self-esteem. Because you can never be truly strong if you still need someone to stay to validate your worth. There comes a moment in everyone's life, quietly but intensely, when you realize you're tired of asking for permission to be yourself. Ask for permission to be sad. Ask for permission to say no. Ask for permission to disagree. Ask for permission to exist in your own way. You've gotten used to shrinking, modifying every bit of your personality, suppressing every emotion, choosing every word to fit, just to keep others comfortable. You think that if you're nice enough, gentle enough, nice enough, they'll stay, they'll respect you. But in the end, you're left with a distorted version of yourself, nice to others, but suffocating to yourself. And then one day you realize no one really loves a fake version. They just love the convenience you bring them. And you, in your obscurity, in your predictability, in your compliance, become increasingly invisible, even to your own eyes. The rebirth of your being does not begin with a scream. It begins with a clear silence, a decision, unobtrusive, unstated, but firm in every breath. I will no longer ask for permission. I will live as I see fit. I will appear in the space of my life, as a host, not as a guest who wants to be kept. This rebirth does not come from outside. No one gives it to you. No one applauds. No one acknowledges it. But you will feel it like a strong heartbeat returning to your chest after years of living only through silent breathing. You begin to behave differently, not to prove anything, but because you cannot continue to live in a false way. You begin to refuse meetings that weigh you down. You no longer feel guilty for putting your phone away, for not responding to a text right away, for choosing to spend time with yourself before anyone else. You start dressing in a way that makes you feel confident, speaking your mind without being overly critical. You start making decisions not because of what others will think, but because you know what is right for you. And then something strange happens. You no longer fear being alone, because you have found the inner companionship you have been searching for in others all your life. Carl Jung once said, "He who looks outward dreams, he who looks inward awakens." And in the moment you turn inward, no longer looking for validation from others, you enter into true freedom. Not the freedom to do whatever you want, but the freedom to be yourself, without conditions, without constraints, without permission. The world will continue to spin. People will continue to judge, continue to love, continue to leave. But now you are no longer swayed by that, because you have found your inner pivot, a place that no longer depends on anyone else's eyes, likes, or existence. Rebirth of self is when you understand you don't need to be perfect to be valuable. You don't need to always be right to be respected. You don't need to always be good to be kept. You just need to be honest. Honest with your feelings, with your desires, with your boundaries, with your desire to live a life that is not based on approval. And then people who really see you, not the image you try to create, will start to appear. They don't come because you please them, but because they are attracted to something rare, a real person, not needing to stand out, not needing to be loud, but clear, complete, whole. That is you, after you stop asking for permission to exist. You when you have made peace with your shadow, when you have set boundaries, when you have learned to say no. You when you have chosen to return to your true self, no longer playing a role, no longer performing, no longer needing to be held back. And from that moment on, you no longer seek respect. You become respect incarnate, because you cannot look down on someone who has stopped looking down on themselves. You cannot control someone who no longer needs permission to be themselves. And you cannot hurt someone who has learned to stand up, after everything, with the self-respect that is reborn in silence. Rebirth is not starting over. It is showing up for the first time fully, without any part missing. And that is true freedom.